Marhaba and welcome to Free Palestine Pod, the podcast. I'm Lama Bazzari.
And I'm Lena Hadi. Each week, we will bring you in-depth commentary from Palestine.
Let's talk Palestine. Today on the show, we welcome journalist Basel Adra and resident of Masafer Yatta, located in the South Hebron Hills in the occupied West Bank. The entire community has been and continues to face forcible expulsion and ethnic cleansing by Israel. Marhaba Basel, and thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
Basel, and I follow you closely on Instagram, and I can't imagine what the community is facing on a daily basis and the war crimes being committed towards your community. Can you share with us the history of you living in Masafer Yatta and the latest on the ground with people who are unfamiliar with the conditions?
So problems and violations by the Israeli occupation start to impact the residents of Masafer Yatta, my people, my grandfathers and my parents and me now and before. It started within the occupation 1967 to the West Bank and Gaza Strip and part of Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt and Jordan. But mostly start to impact and harming our livelihood within the beginning of the 80s, with the Israeli government start building 3 settlements and bring in settlers to live in these settlements. Settlements are built on our land where they stole it to allow these settlers build and to be based there. And they designated 12 to 14 communities from Masafer Yatta out of 20 communities as a firing zone area. So where they want to plan to transfer the residents of Masafer Yatta to give this land for the army to do military exercises. And they designated tens of thousands of our land as a state land, where they take this land under their law as a military law, and to give it only to the settlers to build outposts, more settlements, and more farms, which is happening since the 80s. They continue to expand, building more homes and farms, and to steal our land. And also these settlers start to use physical violence against the residents, the school students, everyone there they can, so people will be afraid. So what happened in 1999, a traumatic event where the Israeli army brought in trucks and army vehicles. They start putting all our things inside these trucks with forces, including they start take the women and the children in these trucks. They beaten up some of the men and arrest them, chase the rest away. A very traumatic forest expulsion happened that day. 700 residents were made homeless by Israel in that day in November 1999. The residents start resisting this by trying to go back to live in their homes. Every time the army chased them, arrest them, confiscate their sheep, their tractors, and make them pay very high fine, a lot of money in order to take their sheep back or their tractors. And the goal is to harm the residents and to prevent them from trying and going back to their home. While the residents starting fighting in this legal battle, they appealed on the courts about what the army did to them. And there the army said that these people are not living here. They just come after the decision of the firing zone were made to take the land, which is not true. The residents of Masafer Yatta is living there since decades, are existing in these communities, and we have all our life elements in these communities. And all the time we bring this evidence to the court. And according to a temporary court decision in 2000, the residents were able to go back to their home. This legal battle continued. And since they went back to stay in their homes, the attacks by the army and the soldiers really increased so much. Mostly demolitions houses, preventing electricity, water, damaging roads. And also they started 3 illegal outposts, and part of each one is within the firing zone. And they steal our infrastructure, our resources, and give it to the settlers. They allow the settlers to build as much as they want, take the water, the electricity, paved roads, public transportations, while they continue damaging ours. It's very clear how racism they are toward us, and living this every day in every day out is really terrifying and make us really exhausting by watching this. And more than that, just like to see that the journalists and mostly journalists and the international community is not interested in this anymore. Like, what who would care about Israel come demolish like a home, 2 homes, 3 homes, like every week in a Palestinian community? It's a routine, you know. It's became something not anymore a story to talk about it, but it is like the ethnic cleansing. This is how Israel doing it, because bringing people in buses and the trucks, this will be a terrifying picture and gonna put Israel in front of big question by the international community. So instead of that, they're doing it every day by make the settlers like free to do physical violence and be protected by the Israeli army. When they are committing that, they come to communities like my community, and they can destroy cars, windows of the houses, throwing stones inside the houses, burning like crops, taking their sheep in our fields, cutting the olive trees. This is happening like at least each week in the West Bank, for example. In Masafer Yatta, it's happening a lot. And all of this, no one look at it unless something big like Hawara will happen. So it'll bring some noise. But otherwise, there's like every day this attacks happening. And we as Palestinians in Masafer Yatta and communities like Area C mostly living under the power of the Israeli settlers and army. And they are the only ones that like creating the facts and changing the facts on the ground, as destroying Palestinian communities and expanding the Israeli settlements, outposts, Israeli settlers like farms. So from 2000, the judge within the temporary court decision said in 3 months we'll get to a final decision. But this 3 months took over than 22 years until last May. The final decision came out and was written by an Israeli settler who himself living in a settlement in the West Bank near Ramallah. And he ignored all the evidence of that Palestinians brought in and just like gave the army the green light to force out of Masafer Yatta 1,300 residents. I just want to tell you that when the decision of when it was designated a firing zone, like make this designation was the Israeli politician Ariel Sharon, who later became like a prime minister. And he wrote in a secret documents there that he gonna decide this area as a firing zone in order to keep the land in the hand of the state for the future to be for the settlements and for the settlers. And this was released like 1 year ago. This was brought to the court and they ignore it also. So it's not about law, it's not about judicial system, it is about politician, the politician of the occupation, which is to kick us out of our land and to give this land to the settlers, to the Israeli settlements, and they can build more and take our land to them. So since last May until now, like a year passed since then almost, and more than 1 year, the attacks even increased more. Let me tell you, like they created already barriers and metal gates in front of some of the communities and are not allowing anyone to go in and or out except the residents, who have to wait hours in these gates being searched and asked by the soldiers and waiting like 6 to 8 hours in these checkpoints each time they want to go in or out from their communities. Cars of lawyers, of activists, of journalists, of human rights organizations have been confiscated by the Israeli army because they are when they are moving in this area. For them, it's moving in a firing zone. The only cars and vehicles today can move there, it's only the settlers and the army. The settlers they're like just driving for fun with the motorcycles, with the 4x4 jeeps, driving in and out to the communities and above the crops and the agricultural land. The army did for 2 months as a military exercise where they bring like 3 tanks, 3 bulldozers, and they start like shooting and driving above the crops between the houses. They put targets for the soldiers in the roads where we walk, where the kids walk to their school, and they shoot at them. They prevent any movement, like the movement of the students, the people, the shepherds are prevented. They confiscated the teachers' cars and prevent them from going into the classrooms. And they stop the children and research them. They already, like last November, came in a normal day and surrounded one of the schools in Masafer Yatta, and a group of soldiers ran to the classrooms, slammed the doors on the kids inside these classrooms. They pushed us away as a journalists and parents. The moment they throw the first sun grenades and bombed, the kids really started to open the windows, jumping out from the windows, running to their like houses. The soldiers chased them to make sure they don't come back to the school, and they brought in like they steal all the kids like balloons, books, bags, chairs, tables, everything inside the classrooms. And then they brought in a bulldozer that was driven and owned by a settler from an outpost nearby that demolished this school in a few minutes. It was really shocking for the kids, for the parents, for us that to happen. And by a settler that is building his outpost and his farm on our land. And we filmed him many times going inside people's houses with a dog and a gun. And instead of putting him in jail, they are bringing him to inform the law on us. What is the law? The law is the Israeli military law that we don't choose it. It's controlling our life by power, by force, that we don't choose it, we don't vote for it. And everything about our life became illegal under this law. And everything the army and the settler do, it is the legal thing. So more and more of these attacks, like 50 houses and properties were wiped out since last May until this year in Masafer Yatta. So many people being like homeless, without a home under this decision. Other 6 schools in this area have been like for the last decision of demolition, and at any moment they can be demolished. I mean, with this current government, anything could happen there. They could happen like another transfer, like the thing happened in 1999. And while we see the same things by the international community, the same statements, the same letters, the same thing they write in their Twitter accounts and their Instagram and their Facebook without changing, without actions. While actions by the Israeli government and settlers and army, they're like are increasing, are changing, or they are doing whatever they want.
Wow. Okay, well, Basel, that is a lot of information to digest, and it's absolutely horrible and horrifying to hear that this has been going on for so many decades. In this series of villages, as I understand, Masafer Yatta, that it's actually a series of villages. So we were wondering if we could explain to our audience how many people exactly live. We understand it was between 10 to 12,000 people in this series of villages, Masafer Yatta, but how many people are still there today? And how many people are risking getting thrown out? And is there anyone that is helping you on the ground, that is helping the Palestinians of these villages, Masafer Yatta? Are they receiving any aid? And if so, who is helping them?
So yes, there is like the people who existing in the communities of Masafer Yatta today, about 4,000. With this particular decision is like people who under threat of being like expelled out of their homes are over than 1,300 people from 12 communities. I mean, all the communities are under threat of attack all the time by different policies by the occupation. This particular decision was about what they call it firing zone area. But we have, for example, the state land where they take our land and give it to the settlers only. And there is a lot of people who's just leaving because of the settlers' violence. The settlers' violence that's happening every day. The settlers come to houses, as you saw in Hawara and last night, and always happening. They throw stones at the people's homes or they burn their houses. Where you see Israeli police doing nothing, because this settler can be himself the policeman at the day, can be the settler at night, or the settler at the vacation. And there is the policy of the Israel doesn't recognize any of the communities almost in Area C. So anything Palestinian built in Area C is illegal for them. And no matter how much we really waste money, time, coming to their courts in order to get permission for the village or for a home or for a water well, they will never give us. The result will be the same always, demolishing in a firing zone or without permission. Archaeological sites, they come out with this game. It's close to a highway, close to a settlement, close to the outpost, so it need to be wiped out or need to be demolished. So this is every Palestinian actually exists living in Area C, which is 60% of West Bank. It's under threat of being homeless all the time by the Israelis. So this is how the policy, and they are working on that, not just in Masafer Yatta, Jordan Valley, in East Jerusalem, everywhere where they call it Area C. Mostly, this is the policy, is to build Israeli settlements and outposts and farms and kicking the Palestinians out of these places. For them, they call it to prevent the Palestinians to have their own state on the border of 1967 by creating facts. So this is how it is. The helps that we got on the ground, to be honest, just by our friends, activists, international activists. So yeah, the activists that come from international activists, also people have like Israeli activists, some journalists who come and write it. But it's not. We don't have altogether. We don't have much power to resist what's happening on the ground, because it's much bigger and need actions by the international community. Without any action be done by the international community, by the US government, by the European governments, that they take really serious actions against this to stop it, as they are always pretending to be the one that protection the human rights, the international law. I mean, it's illegal for the international law to designate an occupied area as a firing zone, to remove 14 communities in order to give this land to the Israeli army to do training. This is illegal for the international law, illegal for international human rights law. Many of what Israel doing, like in the West Bank, it's illegal for the international law. And when the BA go to the ICC, US, France, UK, Italy will block them from going there. So you don't want us to go like find our rights and fight for our rights in the international courts and the international human rights organizations, and you're not helping us on the ground. So what's the solution? Is because you don't trust the judges in the ICC, or because you're supporting Israel committing and war crimes against us as Palestinians living in these communities that don't have any protection, any kind of protection? The army just can come to my home at any moment. They done it last year 7 times. They took like 5 cameras, a car, a laptop. They come like destroy the doors, go search in the house at 2 in the morning, at 5 p.m. whenever they want, and they can walk in, walk out, destroy whatever they want. Arrest my father twice, arrest my neighbor. No one is like looking at this as like violating the international law, or they're looking at it but they're ignoring it, or they're not interested to take action. But this is our life, and we're not living a normal life because of these like Israeli soldiers and settlers that doing everything to make our life not normal. I know many families in Masafer Yatta since 2018 till today, they lost their home over than 5 times. If you can imagine that the army just come back over and over, demolish their home. These families, their life literally became rebuilding a home, not working and living a normal life, but trying to have a home.
How is the community able to sustain itself with this constant demolition? And how about the children who the school was demolished? I mean, where are they currently seeking their education?
So the kids really in miserable situation. They rebuilt for themselves by the community built for them twice a tents, and the army kept coming back and confiscate this tent. So now they're studying in one of people rooms that donate for them and welcome them to have their classes there. And they have another like caravan, which is still used as a clinic on Saturdays when it's a vacation. And it's really like broken. The water comes in during the rain, and the sun come in during the hot weather. People also in Masafer Yatta keep the caves, the old caves that are existing since hundreds of years as a tradition of Masafer Yatta, and this is how the people before lived. So always they try to renovate these caves and to live in them when the army come and demolish their home. I mean, the people doesn't have another place to go live in it. So whether sometimes they build a tent, whether they go in an old cave, and this is how it is. But it's really hard. I mean, also because not just about the houses, but because the army also cutting water pipes, confiscating water tanks, and demolishing water wells that people dig to collect the rainwater and use it later, to prevent any water resource, for example, there, or electricity. They confiscate like so the solar panels, and if we build towers, they would come and just bulldozer them.
And what happens, Basel, what happens to all these people when they are expelled from their homes, when they do leave Masafer Yatta? Where do they go? Do they stay in the occupied territories? Do they go to other countries? What happens?
No, they don't leave Masafer Yatta. I mean, when they got their home demolished, they go to old caves that inside their community, and they renovate them, and they just stay there. No one left or almost from the communities.
Wow.
But this decision from last May allows the army to do that physically, to take the residents of Masafer Yatta out of their homes. Because all these decades, the army were demolishing and make the life of the people miserable. So they aimed to let the people live by themselves. And then they'll tell the world that we didn't expel anyone. They're just building illegally and were demolishing their houses. But now, since it doesn't work for over than 2 decades, they have a court decision that they physically can demolish the houses and take the people out of their homes. It didn't happen until now, but it could happen, as I mentioned before, with this current government at any moment and within the silence of the world.
That is atrocious. But you, I mean, you're a journalist and a Palestinian. If you were to make a statement to the American government and to the supporters of Israel, everyone normalizing with them, what statement would you make? I mean, what appeal would you have to the supporters of the state of Israel? What can we do? How can we get the message out? What would you say?
They should act as they act in other places when they are pretending to protect the international community, as they supporting Ukraine, for example. We don't want the weapons that they are supporting to Russia. I mean, quarter of what they are supporting Russia can be enough to end the Israeli occupation, literally. Just to boycott the settlements and to really take measures against these settlements and the occupation, it can end it. We don't want weapons that they are sending there. We don't want to fight. But a serious diplomatic pressure, allowing the PA to go to the ICC, and Israel should handle accountability for their war crimes that they are doing to the Palestinians and stop using the veto in our faces as Palestinians. That will help us so much to get our rights and to get our freedom.
Basel, if you can share, Masafer Yatta has a very key geographic location within the West Bank, within Hebron. Can you share with us what is the location, the strategic location of Masafer Yatta, and why they are so, I mean, they want to, like you, as you mentioned, they want ethnic cleanse all of Area C. But can you just discuss specifically Masafer Yatta?
Yes, it's like it is within in the green light from it's in the southern West Bank and located near the green line of the 1948. But like one reason I think they are occupying this area because there is like a big Palestinian land with this people. This is why they are like chasing Area C. It's this people living there and more land, and also because it's close to Bir Saba, the Palestinian city that was occupied in 1948 during the Nakba. So that's the goal of like them like chasing this, and they want to occupy it and like annexing it.
And as a journalist on the ground and as a resident, how do you keep yourself safe? You're an eyewitness and you're exposing their war crimes daily.
Well, until now, I'm lucky that I'm safe. I don't keep myself. Like, I try to keep myself. I don't know how to describe it. I was attacked. Attacked and beaten up at least 2 times by the soldiers. They invade my home during night many times to take like cameras and laptop and a car that I use it alongside with other activists. But always they harass me and other people, activists and journalists in the field. They push us away. They try to block us. They used physical violence against me last May and during 2020 on the corona pandemic. They used like a media campaign by the mainstream media in Israel like as a target. So it's easy for them. I mean, I live under a military control, so they can do whatever.
It's integral, I mean, to all our listeners to follow Basel on Instagram, on social media, and also you write for 972 magazine. So it's very important that people follow you and read and find out day-to-day account of these atrocities being committed against your community. And Basel, also, can you tell us how we are able to support you? I mean, as a community that's in the diaspora.
I mean, talk about Masafer Yatta, share our stories, and talk to your government. Act in any way you can act. I don't know the people ability, but at least talk and share our stories would be something really important.
Wonderful. Well, we are definitely going to do that, not just here on the Free Palestine Fund, but with Craving Palestine and the Palestine Lobby. I'm going to encourage everyone to boycott, Israel, as we keep asking everyone. But more so than that, I think we need to get some more international attention. We're here for you. We want to help you. We want to help spread the word about Masafer Yatta and all of the people and their stories. And I'm actually deeply concerned about the children, actually, from what I saw from your feed on Instagram. It sounds like there's a lot of abuse to the children, which is horrific and should also be brought up in the international communities. So I am going to let you go because you look very busy, but I want to thank you for being here, and we'll definitely come back and speak to you again. Be safe. We hope to see you very soon.
Thank you, guys, and keep your voice raised and our stories also shared. Thank you for hosting me.
Thank
you so much. Thank you for joining us this week on Free Palestine Pod. Subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
And be sure to come back next week for a new episode of Free Palestine Pod. Let's talk Palestine.